Hi everyone, I hope you're all doing really well and welcome back to the next part of this MACAW tutorial where I'm going to be drawing in the gap basically. He looks a bit weird now with a big gap in his head, so we definitely need to draw in those yellow feathers and kind of merge the edges into those blue and green feathers. Also, I feel like the edge of these yellow feathers, whether it's because they're layered over the blue feathers and it's making them look green, or whether they actually are green and it's kind of continuing on from this section, there is a few green feathers sort of along the edge as it's merging into the blue, and also here as well. So yeah, it's mainly going to be loads of golden, like really bright yellow colours that we're going to be using, but also maybe a few greens that we used back in part 3. So I'm going to start with the light yellow glaze. I'm just going to also get a scrap piece of paper and just put that over this section that I've already drawn, just so I'm not smudging that area. So with this light yellow glaze, you just want to fill in this yellow area. And sort of try and merge it with the edges of these black feathers and the blue and the green as we kind of make our way around. I suppose it doesn't really matter too much with this being the very first initial layer, but also just try and look at the direction that the feathers are going in and sort of apply your pencil strokes in the same direction. Usually I'd go in with a luminance pencil to start with because they're predominantly wax based, so they're a lot sort of softer to use as a base layer, which kind of works in your favour because every layer and colour that you then add on top just seems to blend a lot easier. So I don't often use polychromos as the first initial base layer, but I feel like this is such a vibrant colour that it's going to keep everything that we add on top super vibrant. And the main thing with this tutorial overall is just, you know, maximising that richness and vibrancy with the colours that you've got. So I've added a nice even coverage all the way through, and I've tried to sort of shade into the edges of those other feathers as well. So that is our first initial base layer with the light yellow glaze. Next up, I'm going to go in with the cadmium yellow. This is a Faber-Castell watercolour pencil, but if you've got the polychromo version, then you can use that as well. Again, super vibrant. And because we've already layered down that light yellow glaze, it should make it even more sort of bright and rich. So with this, I'm kind of focusing more on the slightly darker areas of the feathers, just to start bringing in a bit of sort of structure and trying to break them down into shapes as much as we can. Although the majority of it is kind of very soft feathers that seem to be slightly layered together, but you can't really see sort of individual feathers, if you will. But yeah, just kind of focus more on those slightly darker areas around the edges, especially sort of above this dark sort of black area of the feathers. and use these initial outlines that you can see underneath as a guide for where those feathers are sort of overlapping, and it's casting a bit of a shadow to the one underneath. And again, I'm using like the side of my pencil just to create a bit of a softer line when I'm shading. And you can try and almost drag the edge of these black feathers into the yellowy feathers. So I think actually just layering a little bit of that yellow over the edge of the blue feathers already creates that sort of green outcome, with obviously blue and yellow mixed together makes a lovely shade of green, especially along the edge like that. And it's kind of very similar to the actual green colours that we've used for this front section of the head. So I've not even had to go in with any green colours there. I probably will do, just to kind of merge it nicely into the yellow section with a few green colours. But yeah, that's kind of made a nice start to the edge especially. So yeah, the feathers, if you look closely, are slightly going in different directions. But yeah, that's definitely added a bit more structure to this yellow area of the feathers overall. You can definitely see some of the shapes and the sort of structure and kind kind of how they're layered together. So for now, I'm going to leave that there with the cadmium yellow. So I'm going to go over those exact same areas now, but bring in more of a golden colour. So I'm going to use the Raw Sienna Luminance pencil. And with a light pressure, keeping my pencil controlled. Just work into those areas where I've just used the cadmium yellow. Next up, I'm going to go back in with that cadmium yellow and work into the lighter parts of the feathers. I'm using like a medium pressure. Next up, I'm going to go in with the cadmium yellow lemon. You're going to have to keep up with these names because they're all very similar. But this is another polychromo. It's kind of similar to the light yellow glaze that we used right at the start. But it's got a slight greeny tint to it, and it's, again, super, super vibrant. So I'm going to focus more on where those greeny areas are within the feathers, and also just where it looks like brightest. And just add this to kind of really illuminate those colours. And I've used like a medium to hard pressure depending on which area I'm working in. You can kind of get a feel for how well it's showing up and then adjust your pressure sort of according to that. Next up, I'm going to go in with the terracotta. This is a Faber-Castell watercolour pencil again, but if you've got the polychromo, then you can use that. So I'm going to use this to basically add a bit more depth to those sort of darker areas within the yellow feathers. So I'm going to go over where we've added that raw sienna just before. Focus on the darker areas of the feathers where they look a bit more golden, a bit more orangey. I'm going to also add a tiny little bit of the dark cadmium orange, which obviously is super, super vibrant, probably too orange for what we're drawing here. But because we've added so many layers at this point, and I have applied quite a hard pressure with some of them as well, this shouldn't actually apply on as vibrant as you might think. As you can see, it just blends nicely with what we've got down so far. And it's just making those golden areas look a bit more orangey without being sort of too in your face. A little bit over here. So I'm just going to alter the edge for a minute and focus on this top edge where we've got bits of that green colour. I'm going to start with the permanent green, which is what we used for the majority of this part here. And I'm just going to bring some of these green lines down into the yellowy part of the feathers. Really look at the shape of the edge and how it kind of goes up, down, how there's different feathers kind of slightly pointing in different directions. I think sometimes as well, when you're drawing something that's this detailed and this sort of delicate in terms of all these fine lines, sometimes it helps if you just kind of take a step back and look at it as a whole, especially if you've got the reference photo at the exact same size as the drawing, or even if you want, like, looking at it on a screen, kind of enlarge it so it's the same size, put them next to each other, the section that you're drawing, and kind of compare the edge to the drawing. And see sort of what needs tweaking. So I'm going to add a bit of green sort of in between this black area and the yellow area. So it's going to add a little bit more up here. So still focusing on that edge, I'm just going to go in with some of the blue colours again that we used in the previous part, starting with the Chrysocolor Blue Luminance pencil. And I just want to kind of make some of this green colour look a bit more turquoise, have it blend in nicely with those blue colours that are surrounding it, that it's kind of merging into. Yeah, just kind of make the edge look a little bit neater, if you will. Even if I use this colour over the yellow, it still goes to this gorgeous green colour anyway, because the two are mixing together. And I think I'm also just going to quickly use the dark indigo as well, which is the really dark blue, just to sort of work around some of these little hairs within the feathers. Again, just to kind of neaten up the edges and add in a bit of darker detail. And kind of flicking back down into this yellow section. So just taking a step back and looking at it as a whole, I think that definitely looks a lot better in terms of the overall shape, especially the top edge. I think just a little bit more tweaking. Next up, I'm going to go in with the black polychromo and just sort of neaten up the edge of this black section where the feathers are, and also add in these little darker quills sort of around this section that are almost coming from this white part of the face. So I think I might start with that actually. Look at the length of each of the lines and the kind of distance between them, along with the direction that they're going in. Then once you've sort of placed them and you're happy with where they are, you can sort of build out the width of each of the lines and add a bit of shading around them. Next up, I'm going to go in with the Brown Ochre Polychromo. Again, it's quite a sort of dark golden colour. So with this, you want to start adding in a bit more of that dark detail. So just adding in a few extra dark fine lines, focusing on those like shadowy areas of the feathers. And then I think I'm going to go back in with the light yellow glaze, which is what I used right at the start, and just add a little bit to those lightest parts within the feathers. And if it still looks quite grainy, press down a little bit harder. really squash that pigment into the tooth of the paper. So just to finish off, I'm going to go in with the craft knife slice tool and remove some of that pigment so it'll reveal the paper underneath. And because we've completely squashed down the tooth, added so many layers, it should remove really easily. I'm going to use like the curved side of the ceramic blade. I feel like I always have a bit more control when I use that side, but obviously hold it in a way that feels most comfortable and like you feel like you're in control of it. Hold it in a way that works for you. And I'm mainly going to focus on like the really light parts of the feathers, but also pay attention to the edge as well and how it kind of merges with those blue feathers. We've got like a few here that are kind of perfectly parallel, all going in the same direction with the same distance between them. This should really kind of bring that detail to life, and we should be able to see little bits of that kind of feathery texture amongst the feathers, kind of like we can see in these parts of the feathers as well, like the individual little hairs that actually make up the feathers. think I'm also just going to add a little bit of the white Caran d'Ache Museum Aquarelle pencil and just work into some of these little feathery sections along the edge to make them stand out and to make them look a little bit brighter against that kind of blue and green sort of feathery background. And a top tip for this, because it's quite a soft pencil, I always like to just wipe the top of it. So when you reapply this pencil, it's not going to transfer on any of the green or blue pigment that it's just picked up, because you don't really want to contaminate the yellow section of the feathers. So just keep wiping it so you keep using it as a clean pencil. You can also apply it to other little areas within the yellow feathers. You don't want to add too much because it can desaturate those lovely, rich, vibrant colours underneath. But for any areas that look super bright, you just want to kind of highlight a little bit more, it can actually work quite well. I'm going to go in with the terracotta and just add a little bit into these black feathers. And then use the craft knife slice tool over the top with a super light pressure. And you could even use the dark cadmium orange over that just to kind of tint those like slightly highlighted parts in the black feathers and make them look a bit more orangey. But yeah, I'm pretty happy with the like yellowy golden part that we've just drawn there. I think as I've been sort of merging this one section in with the green feathers and with the blue feathers, I've noticed just a little extra thing to tweak. Your drawing might be absolutely fine, but I feel like I just need to add a little bit more dark detail to the blue feathers. So I've gone in with a really, really sharp dark indigo, and I'm going to kind of work in between where we used the craft knife slice tool. And sticking with like the really short linear sort of parallel lines, just add in a few extra fine lines like this just to bring in a bit more darker detail. So something like that. Just a little bit extra detail, but nothing too much. And I think it's fine to always go back to the areas that we've like finished and just keep tweaking everything as we're kind of progressing through the drawing. So yeah, I hope you've enjoyed part 5. We've got the full head done now, so we've just got the wing and like the front of the body that we can see left to do. And the wing is obviously going to be full of those gorgeous blue colours again. But yeah, I've really enjoyed this tutorial so far. I've enjoyed working on a larger scale. I've enjoyed using all these like crazy vibrant colours that we don't get to use all the time, and kind of combining them together as well. So yeah, it's been interesting to draw. And as usual, I've left the materials list, the line drawing and the reference photo in the video description below, so you should have everything that you need. Any questions, do let me know, and keep posting all of your works in progress in our community chat on Patreon, so I can see where you're up to and we can see each other's as well. Yeah, and I'll be back very soon with part 6, where we'll be making a start on the wing.